I wanted to get started. It's been normally you're a lot easier to reach, but I guess in the last few weeks, it has been quite crazy for you as you grapple with what is going on in the market. So could you paint a picture for our readers about what you're seeing?
A situation where tenants, most of the tenants are trying to do the right thing. And if they have their jobs, from what we can tell, most of them are good and honest people and they pay their rent. Some of them lost their jobs and were not able to pay the rent. And we, of course, understand that and we want to work with them and we don't want to see anybody having problems. You have a very small, we've seen some tenants who still have their job and seems like they're doing okay, but they're trying not to pay.
Do you have a sense of how much income you lost, rental income, like how much delinquency you've had compared to a standard year?
But in multifamily, I would say we had a pretty good month. Our average collection was probably in the mid to high 80s.
Okay.
But some properties collected as high as 95%. People are good tenants, and what I mean by good tenants, they all want to pay their rent if they can afford it. So because, at the end of the day, it's their place. This is where they live. And most people don't want to have any problems. They want to, and I think in today's world, everybody wants to have a roof over their head and have a comfortable place, especially when you have to stay home.
There's been talk quite around the country, actually. New York and Philadelphia, tenants unions and groups just announced that on May 1st, they're trying to put together a rent strike, a mass rent strike. There's been some of this chatter in California too. Does that kind of organizing and discussion worry you as a landlord?
Yes, of course it worries us because we totally understand that some people cannot afford to pay the rent. And of course, we work with them. And there's always laws today on different levels coming from state and city levels where you can't evict anybody anyway. So people, who cannot afford to pay, you basically have to work out a deal with them and hopefully collect that money from them at a later time.
Right.
Going on strike, if, for example, the entire building goes on strike and doesn't pay the rent, guess what happens? Most landlords don't have the savings to be able to withstand that.
Yeah.
And so what happens is if the landlord doesn't have money to operate the building, it will affect the building in a very negative way. The landlord may not be able to make the mortgage payment, which is typically the largest expense on the building. If they don't get any income in, they may not be able to afford the managers or maintenance people. Think about that. If that happens, God forbid, what happens to all the tenants? In some ways, the building cannot operate on its own. It takes staff to operate a building, whether you a large company and you have 5 or 10 employees in a large complex, or whether you're mom and pop that has to hire a maintenance person or somebody else to take care of the building. If all of a sudden they don't have an income stream, they can't afford to take care of the building anymore. Some buildings are owned by literally mom and pops who depend on that income to actually make their own income. Think about those people. So if they don't have the income, they're out of luck. And they can't even get an unemployment check because they don't have a payroll for themselves, So it's really a problem for everybody. And I think it's a very, very big problem that I believe has to be solved from the top down.
So what do you expect from Washington at this point? What would you like to see in terms of federal assistance and state assistance?
Most multifamily operators don't have a payroll. So let's say if you own an apartment building, you hire a property management company to manage the building for you. Therefore, you, by definition, will not have a payroll. So you can't even apply for help because you don't have a payroll, even though you have expenses.
If you had 10 minutes with Steven Mnuchin, let's say, what were the 2 or 3 things that you would want out of that meeting?
I think that in a perfect world, they should freeze all the payments for everybody in multifamily, so nobody gets hurt, whether it's a tenant, whether it's a landlord, whether it's a bank, whether it's a debt fund. Anybody who is involved, who has to pay anybody for anything, should be, in my opinion, if you pause everything, then nobody gets hurt, because everybody has payments to make. Even the bank, their money is not free. So there's cost associated. They also, if they don't get paid, they have problems.
Right.
If a debt fund doesn't get paid, they have problems. They have investors to answer to. Everybody has somebody to answer to. And so everybody gets hurt. And really, at the top of the food chain is the government.
You have several active development sites at the moment, right? I'm assuming active at the moment means they're shut, right? Most of all your sites are, correct?
Well, actually, we are fortunate enough that our sites are in city of Los Angeles and Santa Monica. And as long as you follow the protocol that the cities have for construction sites, what they call an essential business, they're allowing the construction to continue.
Okay.
At least ours are all multifamily. I'm not sure about others, but the multifamily, they're allowing construction to continue for now.
So how has that been disrupted? Is it going along at around the same pace? Because I'm guessing the precautions you have to take on the site slow things down a little bit, probably create additional costs. I wonder about your supply chain for the materials and the cement and the glass. Give us a sense of that.
Right. We haven't seen huge delays. I'm sure there are delays. For example, it will depend a lot where you are in construction cycle. For example, whether you're just starting construction. So if you, let's say, just dig in a hole, then obviously you're not going to be as impacted because all you need is labor and equipment.
Sure.
If you, for example, finishing up a building and let's say, as an example, you need windows and the window supplier, for whatever reason, cannot ship, even if, let's say, they made the windows in time, but now there's disruption in shipment. So you can have delays because of it from subcontractors who are not able to deliver the material for several different reasons.
What kind of conversations are you having with lenders, both on your existing cash flow properties and on your development sites?
So the only properties really that could be affected are the ones that you have to make the payments, every month. And obviously, if your income decreases, it can put stress on many borrowers making that payment.
Yeah.
And what a lot of people don't realize is that if your collection, let's say, is only 85%, that means a typical landlord does not make any money because, and of course,
you play quite close to the line, right? Like the margins are not as...
Well, correct, because what happens if in a typical landlord/borrower, if you have a loan that you received recently, and let's say your leverage is, call it 65%, and typically about 85% of your, sometimes even higher, but on average, I would say 85% of your income will go to pay all your expenses, including mortgage. So let's say for every $100 that you receive, $85 will go to pay these expenses. Sometimes maybe higher, maybe $90. So what happens is if you don't collect that money, even if you collect 85, you did not make $1 in cash flow, zero.
Yeah.
So you cannot pay, for example, things that you may want to pay for in a typical world. So if you collect anything below that, now you have to come out with money in your pocket just to stay alive. But then, you have corporate employees, you have rent payments, right. People have expenses. So at 85%, you basically have no cash flow.
Right.
And that obviously limits people's resources.
So what kind of conversations are you having with the lenders? Are they understanding of what's going on? Are they working with you and other landlords to?
Well, we ourselves have not had any conversations yet with anybody. And we felt it was a little premature.
Okay.
Because we wanted to see what kind of comes out of the federal government and the local laws, because we don't really know yet what is going to happen and what to really ask for. Like, we don't know if in the next 2 to 3, 4 months, the rents may go down by 20, 30, 40%. We really don't know yet how bad it's going to get.
Are you seeing any assets come up? Are you eyeing anything that could be potentially distressed that might be a good play? Is anyone in that mode yet, in that frame of mind? Because I know people always get into that at some point.
Well, not us, because we were always, thinking about how to create new housing. Our model was never about buying distressed properties and try to find deals. And our model was always try to develop new projects, new housing for people to live in.
There are people who've probably got into the business, just a year or two ago, have only just started getting the relationships with investors and getting a sense of what they're doing. And now they're faced with this, which no one in the business currently alive really has ever seen. What's your advice to them? Young, sort of up and coming developers who are now stuck, who may not have the capital to ride this out.
I believe that my advice with the people who are multifamily, I would say do everything you can to hang in there, because in the long run, everything's going to be fine, because people always going to need a place to live. Mm-hmm. As a matter of fact, what we're seeing today, in my opinion, is even going to create more demand for multifamily, especially in places like Los Angeles, mm-hmm. because more people will move here from places like Las Vegas, Texas, and New York. So it's going to put even more pressure, and it's not going to happen tomorrow. It's probably going to be, like I said, 3-4 months till people start moving around, till then unemployment checks run out or whatever it is. And in the long run, I believe that multifamily is going to come out of this as the strongest sector ever in real estate and in any investment, really, in my opinion. I believe that the cap rates will compress even farther, because if you want to invest your money today, where would you put your money? You're not going to put it in 10-year treasury and get 0.5%. Mm. And so I think you're going to have two types of investors coming out of this. People who want to invest their money in what I would call, I'm talking about real estate investors, a safe sector, which in my opinion, the only safe sector today is multi. Mm-hmm. Now that sector is safe. Basically, so you're going to have people who want to invest the money. What I mean by safe is like they know that long-term they'll be fine. Yep. So if they put their money and they buy an apartment building, even at 2 cap, they're going to be fine because the rates are so low, and they're going to be low for a long time.